All right, folks, welcome back. Another story, another great individual. I've actually got a bunch of these guys coming out of Columbus just because of the way network works. It just happens to be that way, and I'm really grateful. I've got to meet such a group of great guys. I mean, literally, there's four or five of y'all. I think, Mike, that I've really had contact with. We were introduced through another mutual friend, and there's a great and I'm not intentionally plugging, but this is just what happens sometimes. There's a group down in Columbus called Noble, and they're the ones that have been connecting guys together, growing strong relationships. And I love that. And I think the biggest thing that I love about this is the fact that we are able to now record and get real stories, which is what narrative is all about.
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you for taking the time, Mike. We're kind of recording this close to a holiday, and I was kind of wondering, like, did we forget? We're all good. We're ready to rock and roll. So I'm grateful. So thank you for taking the time for us.
Thank you.
All right. So, I mean, we talked briefly, and I know that we had a pre-interview call, and I love what you're doing. But let's dig into this whole aspect of what we do with narrative and ask that first question of, who is Mike? Who are you? Not necessarily what you do, but just how do you identify? And, we've got 60 seconds in the elevator going up, getting ready. Who is Mike?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tim. Great to be here with you. So, who is Mike is a fantastic question. Who am I is one of my favorite questions to ask people. Who are you? And so I would say, first and foremost, I am loved by God and I love Jesus. And I am a son of Don and Sue Mattis. I'm a husband to Beth Mattis, my wife, and a father to three kids, Lucy, Peter, Joseph, whose middle name is Edmund. So we got Lucy, Peter, Edmund. If that doesn't give away our Narnian connection, it's usually our dog Tumnus that does the trick.
Yeah, we were talking about that in the pre-interview aspect of it, and yeah, it definitely shows a lot of that. There's a side note, and I told you about this, but there was a friend of mine that wrote a very, very short biography about C.S. Lewis and some of the stuff and all of the stuff that digs into Narnia. That's a whole nother story, a whole nother interview, and I'm sure that you could probably add a lot of depth to that because I'm sure you've studied. So, now that's really, really cool. So let's kind of look at this aspect of when we look at our lives, we grow up believing a narrative. And both there are good things and there are negative things. There's good and bad with everything. And especially when we look at our childhood, we sometimes carry some of these false beliefs or these false narratives forward into our adult lives. But let's just start with this aspect of what are or were some of the false narratives that you looked at and believed before you stepped into. So basically, what was your adult life going to be like as you're sitting there as a child thinking, okay, this is how my life is going to work? So what were those beliefs? What were those narratives? What was your childhood like?
Yeah, so I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in a fairly affluent neighborhood. And while I grew up in a Christian family, I would say that the American dream narrative was pretty loud in the same space and was intertwined with the narrative of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. I saw myself, with the 2.5 kids living in a nice house, clear comfortability, and that's what it looked like to have a flourishing life. And I think you're right. We are narrative people. We are storied people, and we have a story that drives us. And I would say that the world around me often said, you need this in order to be truly who you are. You need to do something great in the world. Make a splash. My dad was on the cover of a programming magazine for something he created. He was in his yearbook in high school for like the most likely to be successful. So what did that look like, to be named as the person who's going to be successful? And then it was college that really started to transform that understanding of my own narrative and who I was.
So what did that? I should say more. The question is, what was the impact of all of
Mm.
that pressure. And we've talked about this on our podcast quite a bit. Everything from somebody directly spoke to you and say, "This is what you will be. This is what you will become. This is the path to success." Sometimes it's a verbal. Sometimes it's an assumed. It's like an example. Sometimes it's a weight of a generational thing, like kind of what you're suggesting there. But what was the impact of that narrative for you, and how you were going to live and grow into it?
Yeah, so my dad was a self-taught computer programmer and very successful in that realm for research and development, and was working for a large pharmaceutical company. And um, during my college years, I even was working a summer job with that same pharmaceutical company, doing programming, helping them. This shows my age a little bit, but helping them move from Windows 3.1 to Windows 95, and how you could think in multiple areas and structures for that. And basically was told, like, hey Mike, just get a degree and we'll be able to start you off on this incredible path, with a really generous salary at the time, to live into what it seemed like God might be calling me into. But I did not want to go that route. And so I was a bit torn by, here's where it seems like I'm propelled to go into computer programming. I don't want to go there. It's worked so well for my dad and my upbringing, a bit of cognitive dissonance of what was it that I was supposed to be about. But then felt a call a different direction in my college years and trying to wrestle through what that looks like with
Well,
especially this.
let's peel that back a little bit, because I
Yeah,
think there's a lot of times. I mean, it sounds like there is a combination with you of society is pushing, your parents are encouraging, and I think they're all doing it for your benefit, right?
yeah,
But at the same time, internally, you're just like, dude, this is not gelling with where I want to. Like, it doesn't fit, and you can feel it. So let's peel that back, that layer a little bit, and say, okay, what was that wrestle like? I mean, again, I'll let you control this narrative as far as where it goes in the conversation, but I can only imagine the aspect of, well, if I tell my parents that I don't want to do this, is there going to be extreme disappointment? Am I going
yeah.
to be viewed as a failure? And these bosses, are going to look at me and say, like, are you freaking nuts? I mean, here's a handed
Yeah.
to you job. All you got to do is just this 1, 2, 3, and you're just like, I don't want it. I don't want it. So let's peel that back. Like, what's going on internally, and how is that struggle happening in your mind?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a struggle because my gift set's much more relational, and I was understanding who I was in these relationships. And so after my freshman year was when I did that software engineering and was said just graduate. I wanted to do this summer project, but I had to do the internship before I could do the summer project. So after my sophomore year, I did a summer project, yeah, along the East Coast, in Ocean City, New Jersey, with a collegiate ministry organization called Coalition for Christian Outreach and Leadership Development. And man, that's where my gifts really started to thrive,
Hmm.
in this realm of ministry.
Can I pause you?
And
Can I
yeah,
pause you just so living in a world kind of cold, and I'm just going to use that word to describe, because there's not a whole lot of feeling and impact that you're looking at, and all of a sudden you're introduced to this ministry that you're talking about. What happened to your soul, like internally?
yeah, yeah.
Like, how did it just come alive? Like, was it like an oasis in a desert, kind of like, what was going on there, and how can you actually describe that?
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian family. I'm thankful for that and my upbringing there. I would say that it gave me the skeletal structure of who I was.
Hmm.
So I had good bones,
Okay.
but no flesh on that. And then in college was where I gained this flesh and this muscle for who I was called to be. Like, it was enlivened in a beautiful way, that I wasn't having to live this dualistic sense of Christian on Sundays and then the American dream Monday through Saturday, or trying to go for that. And once I understood how that could look to integrate those two things together, it gave me a boldness and a confidence, to walk into classrooms differently, to see the world differently around me. When it came to who am I, and that basic question that all of us ask in the college years. I understood that to in the concept of being an image bearer and not being my own, and that was freeing, and that lifted any weight of having to perform for myself.
Okay,
And
so
so, yeah.
go ahead.
No, and so then it became then how do I express this to my parents
That's what
that
I was. That's exactly
yeah
what I was like. You've
uh,
got this picture. I mean, we've got this mental picture of
I am
you.
not going to be following my dad's footsteps. I am not going to be the next software engineer for this large pharmaceutical company. That's not where I'm called to be. Um, And man, there was a lot of trepidation in telling my parents, I don't think I'm called to this. In fact, to go the full opposite, to tell them, I think I'm called into ministry and I'm going to have to raise support. And I'm going to, like, I'm not even guaranteed a salary, but I'm going to have to ask for people to fund this
Mm.
and make this work. Uh, I told God I need my parents' blessing because I did want that and I respect them. And saying the words like "you have our blessing" is not common language in my family, even though I was brought up in a Christian home. It doesn't fit the mold of
Okay,
the
but
denomination I was part of.
before we get, and I want to get into that and kind of
Yeah,
uncover that because I think that's a huge, huge transition aspect of how this story is going to play out for your life.
yeah,
But in that point of transition, and many, many times we talk about things, we always know that there's a perspective shift from the old narrative into something new, right? And
yeah.
there's typically a catalyst. I'll use that word because there's something that actually creates that shift. And it could be something as simple as we move from one city to another city. Or it
Mhm.
could be something as what you just said. You kind of experienced this and you had a taste of what you thought you were going to do for the rest of your life. Sometimes it's a tragedy. Sometimes it's a trauma. Sometimes it's very, very a drastic situation that is very traumatic to individuals, but each situation has its own catalyst. And so when we look at that, what was your catalyst of, man, I know that I can't live the way that I was going, the way that the society, parents, what was that catalyst? I mean, you had that taste, but there had to be something that was going to push you. What was that catalyst that pushed you into, okay, I am going to change my perspective. My world view is going to be this way.
Yeah, so I would say it was the college ministry and stepping into college. So I went to University of Pittsburgh. I stepped out of my suburban bubble and into an urban context
Mm.
and got to experience urban life and its hardships and figuring out life on my own for the first time. Also going to this conference called Jubilee where I was introduced to people that see all of life integrated in a biblical narrative, and what that looks like. I had this very dualistic understanding of things, of a sacred secular split. So when someone told me no, it's all under the same heading, I was like, wait a minute, this changes everything
Mm.
for me to wrestle through. Um, I
Okay, and
was
I'm going to
I
pause you because what
Yeah.
does it mean under the same heading? Like, what does that mean? I mean, like,
Yeah.
can you kind of give me a little bit more of a picture and dive into that?
Yeah, so this I like you have quote unquote Christian music that sings very clearly about Jesus, and then you would have quote unquote secular music that doesn't mention Jesus at all. And when I got rid of that sacred secular split, and all of a sudden I'm listening to artists that may not say Jesus right off the bat, but they're doing it with that perspective. That changed the way. And when I was a physics major for a good while in college. And when a professor was doing a problem called Schrodinger's equation, which is a high level math problem, and he stepped back from the board and said, "Isn't it amazing that we can actually study this stuff, that there's order and there's rightness and there's direction to it? And it's not chaotic. It isn't just is, there's something underlying it." And that was an aha moment. Be like, even physics, God is Lord of that. And so then it became understanding that there's a direction to everything. There isn't these two kind of silos for everything. Either things are pointing towards the gospel or away from the gospel. And all areas of life have this directional component to it rather than being segmented.
Mm-hmm.
And that was mind blowing to me to start to see that direction that things are pulling. I would go so far as to say that there is some Christian music out there that is directionally pointing away from the gospel. That is not good music and is not glorifying to God. So we need to always wrestle with this sense of what is that right direction. And I was encouraged to wrestle with that in the college years, even down to some of the people I hung out with. I grew up in a prim and proper kind of understanding of church and how you dress and how you look and what you can say and can't say. And then all of a sudden, I meet this guy who's got a goatee, ears pierced, shaved head, passionate for Jesus. And all of a sudden, my parents are like, "What happened? What's going on?"
Doesn't look the part.
Doesn't look the part. Exactly. Well, there isn't a look to the part. It's about direction. That was key.
Yeah, and I love how you are overlaying multiple levels of this. And I agree with you in the aspect of there's always been this belief. I mean, shoot, we see it in a politics where it says you have the separation of church and state, but yet Christianity has influenced so much of so many different venues. Like there's so much foundational things like you're talking about. All right,
Yeah.
so how then, when you started to see this overlapping, everything's kind of under one roof.
Hmm.
I'm going to ask the question: how do you flesh it out? How did you start to make it part of your life? And before we get into that, how do you go to your parents and say, "Look, this is how I'm seeing this, and I want your blessing, I want your approval, I want to be able to do this in lockstep with y'all." But man, I'm on this path, and it's similar, it's running parallel, but it's different.
Right, right. So I started to understand some basic worldview questions of who am I, where am I, what's wrong with the world, and how's it made right. And there could be a fifth question added of what time is it, understanding the time we live in a little bit more. But I came to the understanding pretty quickly in that freshman year and sophomore year in college that those questions, we are asking those questions all the time, and every decision we make is answering those questions in the blink of an eye. And when we take a moment to reflect on what it is that we're allowing to answer those questions and how we answer those questions, it is powerful and it can transform the culture around us. And rather than being transformed by the culture, rather than just being consumers of culture, now we have the opportunity to create a new culture in a new way. And then when I understood that the Bible provides answers to those questions, it isn't just get my golden ticket to go to heaven, but has a deep understanding of who am I, where am I, what's wrong with the world, and how's it made right in this kind of narrative of creation, fall, redemption, restoration. Man, it was a powerful moment to say, no, I can own my story now in Jesus, and I don't have to let the culture tell me who I am and what it means to be valued. So that was strong, and that gave me then the courageousness to go to my parents and say, "Hey, I don't think I'm supposed to go down this path of software development and engineering and make lots of money. In fact, I think I might be called to help challenge college students to think differently about the world, and I'm going to need to ask for money." The hardest part for that was their first question to me was like, "So how do you make money?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm going to ask people like you for support." And they're like, "But you're not a missionary in a different world, in a different
Right.
part of the world." I'm like, "Yeah, this is true. I'll be here in the United." Like that was mind boggling to say you can be in the United States and raise support. Like that's weird. Now being a bit of an entrepreneur myself, I realize that's what entrepreneurs do every day. Um, and so they were like, "We don't understand, but you have our blessing." And to hear that out of my parents was a remarkable moment. Now, to be truthful, they just thought I had to get it out of my system so I could get a real job eventually. Uh,
And then you
but
were going to come back to the fold. You're going to be
right,
that
right,
coach.
right. He'll come back in. He'll get back there. Yeah. So that didn't happen. I spent 21 years in collegiate ministry before what I'm doing now, and that was a beautiful time.
Well, and it's interesting too that they were willing to allow you. That doesn't happen all the time, especially
Yeah.
when it comes to the parents. So, how is the relationship today? Can I ask that question? How are you guys
Yeah,
doing?
yeah, yeah. Is a great question. So it was about 2 years into my being in college ministry. It was clear my parents did not understand this. Like, what is
Right.
going on with our son? They love Jesus, but that wasn't the paradigm. Like, okay, you love Jesus, you go to church on Sunday, you pray and read the Bible, but then you go and make money and
Right.
you live the American dream life in a comfortable life of sorts. And you support missionaries and you support your church and everything like that. That's all important, but that's not for what we do. Um, but then it was they came and visited me while I was leading that summer project a few summers later, and they got to see me interact with students, and it was really funny. Like, this is how God laughs. Is a student asked for water, and I gave them a pitcher of water and poured them water. And my dad turns to me and goes, "I get what you do now."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "I just poured the kid a glass of water. I don't know, like, how," but somehow that interaction help them understand that. And my dad was humble enough to recognize that, like, hey, Mike, there's a lot that I can learn from you in
Mm-hmm.
your faith walk, and that we can learn that I can learn alongside you now as you're
Yeah.
a man and an adult.
That's
And so
awesome.
that was a beautiful moment as well of respect and care.
Yeah.
So I have a good relationship with my parents. I know that they wish we were back in the Philly area. Columbus, Ohio, has now been home for me for over 20 years, and the East Coast is just a different lifestyle. So I don't want to go back to that.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. So, what do you do now to? I mean, you've practiced this, and kind of following a little bit of your journey. You've been doing this for quite some time. But
Mhm.
how are you crafting your story? How are you crafting your narrative? And I'm sure that it comes along with, and maybe you can share one of those hard times of like, look, I don't think I'm going to make it here, because that happens, and
Yeah.
I'm sure probably more than we would care to mention. But what do you do now? So there's two questions there. One is, what do you do now to craft and create and build that narrative? And the second one is, can you share one of those oh crap moments, for lack of a better word there? Like, can you share one of those times?
Yeah. So now I am the executive director of a father's ministry called Kingdom Dads. It's a ministry that equips dads to love and lead their families towards God's kingdom. And this work is a continuation of a lot of the lessons I learned over the past 21 years prior to it of in collegiate ministry. And what does it mean to help my family, my kids, uh, craft their story in God, and my wife and I to lead our family together as one and be on the same page in this way. Intentionally understanding that my top calling is to be a husband and to be dad. And how do I do that? The thing that gets me out of bed every morning is understanding that family is the smallest unit of culture, yet the most powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And every day I'm getting an opportunity to cultivate a new kind of culture for the world with my kids and the ways we interact with as a family and go out there. So about 2 years ago, I was invited to become the first executive director of Kingdom Dads and to launch it as its own nonprofit into the world. And so got a lot of guys very excited about it. Like, yeah, we'll figure out how to form a board, how we'll form a 501c3. Man, it started like a rocket. It was great. Like, the excitement was there and everything. And then about 3 months in, we ran out of money. It wasn't coming. I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to get paid the next month, and I took a cut in pay. And oh boy, like, I want to care for my family and watch over them. And so it was a moment on the knees to pray for God's providence and care and figuring it out. He did amazingly. I still don't know exactly how that'll work, but it's still working. Um, but there's been moments when I've been driven to my knees when God's timing clearly doesn't line up with my timing. God's level of comfort for me clearly doesn't line up with my understanding of what comfort for me looked like. But it all is for growth in understanding who He is, and I think so that trust then that I can have while being faithful to what He has called me to be about. To say, Lord, establish the work of my hands today for your glory and for my enjoyment of you. Understanding that I am not my own, but belong body and soul and life and death to my faithful Savior, Jesus Christ. Those truths just ring in my mind all the time with everything I'm about. And I pray that the same is true for my kids. I know it is true for my wife as well, as we shepherd our family together and lead our family together.
Well, so let me ask you this: the vast majority of people are not going
Mm-hmm.
to do what you did. They're not going to go out and raise support. They're not going to go out. I mean, the vast majority of people are going to do basically what the society has said. Hey, I'm going to get this job, and then I'm going to give money to missionaries.
Yep.
How do you tie, or how do you relate? Because I know that you talk to dads all the time. I know that you work with men across many, many different industries. How do you
Mm-hmm.
relate what you do
Mm-hmm.
and then be able to talk to somebody who's in the middle of a 9 to 5 job that can't spend all day talking to dads? That can't do, like, they're in that field, but yet they feel called to. How do you
Mm-hmm.
reconcile? How do you relate? How do you what advice would you give in order to be able to help them grow in their walk or in their narrative?
Yeah, great question. So there's two things I would do, and part of this is built into the Kingdom Dads kind of curriculum and discipleship and practices. But one is asking the question, "Who are you as an individual?" and not letting what you do define you, but understanding then the direction you get to take what you do. For
Mm-hmm.
instance, there's a dad who runs a business. They just collect junk from old houses and they get rid of it. Like he's like, Mike, this is what I do for my 9 to 5. This is how I make money to put food on the table for my kids. Like, that's what I do. I'm like, you are getting to restore the created order, to take out all the crud and dirt and make it beautiful again, make a space for something new to be created. Think of it that way. Oh, well, this way it shows that everything we do can be time honoring to God. Uh, uh, One CEO got really upset with me when I told him that he could honor God just as much as the trash man who collects his trash honors God. Like, that they're cleaning up after us. They're making a more beautiful space for us to be creative and the CEOs to create their businesses and stuff. The titles fall by the wayside. And when we can allow our titles to fall by the wayside, allow our paychecks to not be our comparative effort, and honestly, let anything that we try to make a comparative work fall by the wayside, it allows us to clarity to clarify what it is that God wants us to be about. And then it allows us to begin to do a bit of reordering and right ordering of those callings God has placed on our lives. And to this point, I invite dads to and challenge them to think about how are they making sure that their greatest calling as a husband and dad is set before their calling in their workplace. They can be fired from their workplace. They can be replaced in their workplace. They cannot be replaced in the home. And when we look at the created order, even the first ordained thing that God ordains pre-fall, even to cultivate His creational order is marriage. And so, how do we live into that and hold that with high respect, and allow those things not to become second and attended to lower on the scale? So, even for those that are in ministry, in pastoral roles, not allowing those things to happen, and then in their 9 to 5 job, first seeing it as something they get to do to honor God's good work of redemption, restoration, and reconciliation, helping them figure that paradigm out, and then not letting it be their identity, so they can rework their callings.
Well, and I love where you're going with this, and you didn't use these words, but this is what I'm hearing in my head.
Mm-hmm.
you can't allow the title to be your identity. You can't
Yeah.
allow your job to be an identity. You can't
Mhm.
allow all of these things that you're talking about in the business world, whatever, to be the identity of who you are, because when you lose it, it
Mhm.
crushes you. And that's why we see a lot of suicidal aspects and activity once
Mhm.
a business crash. I mean, Wall Street, when the Wall Street crashed, we had all kinds of suicidal type things because they had lost their identity. And I love what you're saying, because it's like this identity is founded in something completely different than what society tells us. And it is part of our narrative. It's part of how we have to write it and find that core identity and then write our narratives out of that core identity.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
Uh,
When we get to open
Same
ourselves
thing
up.
you said, just a different wording.
No, much better, concise. I love it. I'm known for being very wordy at times. So I'm working on the C.S. Lewis conciseness of thought that he was so good at doing
Mm,
in all his writings. But yeah, when we can come to an understanding that we are not our own, and that our identity is in who loves us first, not in who we love first, or in our identity gets to be in a space rather than in what we do in a space, is just a beautiful freeing thought for us.
mm,
It ought to free us from anxiousness and depression, which are crazy abundant even in this generation. And
absolutely.
my concern is that while we like to blame it on technology and phones and social media as the reason why our kids are so anxious and depressed, I believe that they're watching us and they're seeing us get so anxious and depressed as parents because of being driven by what we do, and even how we're understood by these technologies.
Yeah.
That
All right,
that's
so we have to start wrapping up, but I want to give you the opportunity, because we've touched on a lot of things, different things as far as the identity, talking about the world around you, the struggle, the pressure to do something, to be something, and you had a point of transition, and it was like you had a lot of different, and then the 5 questions that you're talking about. If I take all of that stuff and I say, okay, what was the one thing, or what is the one thing? Maybe it's something you didn't share, but what is the one thing that you're like, man, don't walk away without getting this. Don't stop listening without getting this one thing. What would that one thing be?
I think don't let what you do define who you are. I know that that's a big part of what you're doing here with the narrative podcast. That's a beautiful thing, and I would say take one intentional step toward living into your calling and with a sense of direction, towards understanding that redemption, restoration, and reconciliation process, and live into it with some consistency. And that will make you a leader that is creative rather than just a consumer.
I love that. I love that. And I would add one thing, because I was just listening to Jordan Peterson and he was talking about this exact thing, that one step. And I wanted to add this because I think this is such an important key. Is make that one step something that is attainable, something that's
Mhm.
small, something that you can actually do. Don't make that
Yes.
one step this magical, monumental goal of changing, because it's not going to happen. If it's too big, you're not going to do it. And when he said that, I was just like, man, it struck a nerve even with me, because there's sometimes I set out the goals and I set out these, large things that I want to accomplish, and then I get overwhelmed and then I don't do anything because it's like it's too far away, it's too much. It's just, but set that one step, just like what Mike had said. Set that one step as something that's attainable, something that you can do. So, how can they get in contact with you? I know that you're building groups, and I know that you're doing a lot of stuff with Kingdom Dads. But if something resonated and somebody wants to get in connection with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, the best way is to visit kingdomdads.org. My contact information is there on the website. You can reach out, and I would love to have a virtual conversation. If you're local here to the Columbus area, would love to get together. I will buy you a cup of coffee. I don't drink it. I haven't grown up to the taste yet, but I will certainly do enjoy and partake. And I would love to have a conversation. So again, kingdomdads.org. You can schedule a time on there for further
Love it.
conversation.
Love it, love it, love it. So, all right, awesome. Thanks again. I really, truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day, Mike. I mean, if for those that were just listening in the background, his family's walking back and forth, I think. So there's a couple of people going back. And I love that. I mean, I love the fact that you're just so authentic and that you're real and you're just who you are. So, again, appreciate everything. Appreciate the time. Appreciate you being here today.
Thank you.
All right, for those listening again, if you happen to want to see some of the micro expressions, the extra nonverbal language, man, head over to YouTube. You can check us out. We're definitely going to post things out there. But again, if something resonated with you, let us know. And whether you talk to Mike or myself, we do enjoy hearing back from you about how you are changing your life. And at the end of the day, we really want to hear how you're crafting and creating your story. And why? Well, because your story matters. Your story changes and grows with you, and every story has a purpose. So don't forget and keep writing your story.